Hey there, YouTube. I'm Jack, and this is Raw Tropical Living. Thanks for joining me today. As you can tell, Amanda's back. Got back from Florida yesterday, and we've been staying busy so far today. We've already done a live on Instagram. I've shot a couple of videos. She's been working, and we just decided to keep the workflow going. Today we're going to talk about intuition versus knowledge on a raw food diet. Guys, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please go down and hit that subscribe button now. Then click on the little bell and check send notifications so you'll stay subscribed to the channel. This one's just going to kind of be, I just suggested doing this, and I think we're going to do some more videos like that just come from our conversations. Like this was just, Amanda had to return her rental car yesterday when she got to Pensacola. And I went down to pick her up, and this just was one that kind of popped up as we were, driving home. And we kind of realized that a lot of times we sit and talk about stuff amongst ourselves that like, wow, this would be something good to share in a video. So we're kind of trying to make a point of noting those, writing those down, and just sharing from some of our conversations. And we hope you will take some value out of it.
Yeah.
I think both of us kind of have similar views on it from the way we were talking about it yesterday.
Yeah.
I'll let you start out since I've done all the talking so far.
Well, the topic is intuition versus knowledge,
Right.
and how you sort of play with that in relation to your diet. But it is something that kind of applies to our lives as a whole, too, I think.
Right.
There's a lot to be said for gut feelings, and I'm not sure if any of you guys have read the book, The Biology of Belief. We've talked about it a few times. I've got it actually right there.
Where's that?
Yeah. It's up on the top, the book, How Not to Diet. Yeah. Yeah, this book, guys. This is a fantastic book. This book kind of explores why your gut feelings are something worth paying attention to, because essentially your cells respond to electromagnetic energy faster than they respond to chemical signals. And so your body communicates through both chemicals, neurotransmitters and all of that. A lot of Western medicine works in kind of the chemical area, and through electromagnetic energy. And because the electromagnetic signals travel faster, they impact the environment inside of a cell just the same way that regular chemicals, again, like neurotransmitters, would impact the environment inside of a cell. So that impacts the way that a cell behaves and the way that it responds to different stimuli and what genes it is deciding to express at a given point. And so by simply having a gut feeling, even if it's not necessarily correct or accurate, you're kind of creating an environment in your body where it feels accurate to your cells. And by going against it, you're kind of creating conflicting messages for your cells, and it becomes almost a problem that you've created yourself, honestly, because there's reality, and I think that there's a lot of people out of touch with reality these days, but whether or not something is actually true, if you have a gut feeling, it kind of becomes true for you. And once that's the case, you kind of need to follow it, which is a whole other subject, because I have a lot of opinions around that. And my mom's cancer, she is really against radiation. She got radiation for skin cancer on her nose when she was in her 20s. And since then, she's had her nose chopped all up because of skin cancer. She keeps getting cancer again because of the original radiation. And her dermatologist is who told her this. And then 5 years ago, she had breast cancer. And it was a very mild form, and she did wind up agreeing with them to do the radiation that they recommended. And now 5 years later, the latest type of cancer that she has, which is not breast cancer, it's something different, although it was localized in that area in terms of how it started, is a lot more aggressive than what she had before. And they, again, words from her doctor, in about 2% of patients, this happens as a result of the radiation that she was given for her previous type of cancer, which was way less scary and way less aggressive. So she already knew she was against that kind of thing. If nothing else, that helped create an environment in her body where she was against the signals that she was sending her body, essentially. So we've had a lot of conversations about that. So that's one type of intuition, but there's this concept of intuitive eating, and your nutrition information and the knowledge that you have around that. And when you are maybe transitioning to a vegan diet or a whole food plant-based diet or a raw vegan diet, it is really, really useful to gain that knowledge, to do a lot of research. All of Dr. Greger's books are fantastic. There are so many great books out there that you can read that help you understand the basis of nutrition. And
I think we develop our nutrition through the knowledge. I in a way, because like I say in the beginning, we have a little bit of intuition, but when it comes to certain things, we don't have even a base to start from. Like I remember when I first started this, there were things that I leaned towards, but I didn't know enough about it to be that intuitive about it. So it's kind of like what we were talking about yesterday. In the earlier stages are more knowledge and a little bit less intuition. And then as you go along, you know, it becomes, you don't have to rely as much on knowledge or reading something in a book, and your body does just kind of learn to, but it learns through the things it's learned. If that, I mean, that's a little redundant, but
yeah, I think that you have intuition when you're starting out. Whether or not that intuition is helpful for you is a different story. Because if you are, for example, going into raw veganism for the first time, the foods are even less calorically dense, so the volume of food that you're going to need to eat once you sort of get used to that lifestyle is going to be different than what you would have eaten on even a whole food, plant-based cooked lifestyle. So I think that there's a certain level of intuition there where in the beginning, intuitively, you're like, no, I don't want to eat this much, I'm too full. And you know, I'm not saying don't listen to that. I am saying that if that's something that's coming up, eat more frequently so that you're not making yourself uncomfortable, but you're still getting enough nutrition in. And that's just one example. But he's absolutely right. There is a point where you cross over a certain threshold where, and I think I've heard from some of my followers about this, where they feel almost confused at this point. There's almost too much knowledge, and it becomes like a failure to launch situation a little bit, where they feel overwhelmed by that amount of knowledge and almost feel like they can't make any food decisions anymore. Or it becomes so all-consuming that their whole approach to food, whether it is raw or junk food vegan or whole food plant-based or whatever, becomes just too controlling and too limiting and too restrictive, and it's in that way limiting for their lives, and it is limiting for their nutrition because they're not getting enough variety in, and all sorts of things. So there is a point where an element of intuition can take over.
I think for me, maybe there was some like where the intuition even came in the beginning was, I think there was an intuition within me even from the beginning that told me what information was valid or worked for me and what didn't. Because there's a lot of, I mean, you know, even within the raw food world, raw veganism, you can see things that, you can say one person that says this and you'll have another person that says something the total opposite. You should do black, no, you should do white, and back and forth, and telling you different ways to do this. And even from the beginning, I guess you do have some intuition, because there were just things about this lifestyle and ways certain people approached it that made sense. It's just like, okay, that makes sense. And then there was other ways that I saw that I'm just like, I can't tell you why. I couldn't sit there and argue with the person and be like, no, I don't. And I'm not even saying they're wrong. It just did. I'm like, nah, it just doesn't, that doesn't feel right to me. This does feel right. So yes, but I kind of call it intuition with training wheels. Like it was almost like multiple choice. Like I had option, like I didn't have to just stab it in the dark. In other words, like I had choices, and then I could say, okay, well, this, and I have that.
Yeah, that sounds like a distinction between intuition versus intuitive eating.
Right.
Because in a sense, I think what we're talking about is that you do start to eat more intuitively after you've been doing it a certain amount of time, and it sort of shifts between the knowledge and intuition a little bit. You are eating more intuitively. I say more as opposed to intuitive eating, because that can really go off the rails for some people. For some it works, like, great, but for some of us it really goes off the rails. But I think that intuition in terms of, oh, this person is the kind of person that I think I might trust or that I might believe or follow in some capacity. Maybe not 100% with everything that they say and do, but this seems like the right type of information for me, for my lifestyle, for my preferences, the location that I'm living in. You know, if you're living really far north, like raw might not be for you, period. Like just based on accessibility. So that kind of thing, I think there's a lot of intuition that's involved in gathering
and also
knowledge.
too, just so this doesn't sound too woo-woo, because I've heard people talk, I've heard too much woo-woo talk on the intuitive eating too, is I'm always checking my intuitive eating, like I'm constantly, and that's where some of these videos come from. It's just me doing my research. Like, yes, I'm intuitive, and I've learned a lot about the different things I need to get on this diet and on this lifestyle. But I also learn things. I will go in and I'll learn some new knowledge. Like we just did a little live on Instagram about sprouts. I learned just enough within that video. Okay, I'm going to go from including 1 cup of sprouts a day to 2 cups of sprouts. So I'm always learning. I'm always adding knowledge to that, and that knowledge just makes the intuition a little bit stronger. But just so nobody leaves here thinking you're just like, yeah, man, I'm just totally, you know, eating whatever I think. I'm constantly checking my nutrition. I'm constantly checking my knowledge. Okay, I read this. Now I need more greens in there. I need more sprouts in there. So don't misunderstand that part of it and think it's just some, you know, like I say, some hippie thing where you're just eating whatever, you know, kind of resonates with you at the moment. And also, too, I don't eat for taste. I eat for my nutrition. I kind of look at food. I enjoy my food. I enjoy tasty food from time to time, but 95% of the time, food is a nutrition delivery system for me.
I love that wording. This is my nutrition delivery vehicle.
Yeah, and that's why, and Amanda was just drinking on a huge smoothie before we started. I had mine about an hour before she had it, and that's why we like those smoothies. Because you can pack so much good nutrition in there.
Well, what's also awesome about that too, though, is that I'll have like my smoothie like that, but then like maybe dinner is like the most decadent ice cream ever. Like I have something that's such a nutritional powerhouse that the next one I don't have to be very worried about it. Like I can literally eat whatever I want at one of those meals.
Yeah.
So one is very like pleasurable and taste oriented, and then the other one is like, doesn't taste bad. It's just not, I mean, it's not on the level of the other thing, but everything that we eat doesn't have to be up here taste-wise. Like, it's really not necessary.
That is kind of where I've got the best of both worlds. Like I said, I don't know how many people would actually like my green smoothie, as nutritious as it is, but that's actually one of my favorite things. When I make it, I'm not sitting there with that big amount, and believe me, the amount that I take in,
I know.
If that was not tasty, you'd kind of finish, you know, you'd get it made and you'd be like, oh God, I got to get that stuff down. But no, I'm like, you know, to me, when I make my green smoothie, it's like I have a bowl of ice cream or something. I'm like, all right, you know, this is going to last me at least 45 minutes here. So,
well, that speaks a lot to how our taste buds adapt over time too, because I love the flavor of turmeric, for example, and it's something that I use so often because of my IBD issues. And I've even used it for like toothache thing before, like in Costa Rica. It just works so well at bringing inflammation down. And I know a lot of people, like I like it so much that I would be happy to just snack on plain like turmeric root, like fresh root. I just really like the flavor. But I've heard from a lot of people that they can't stand it, that it's bitter and it's pungent and it's strong. In that regard, maybe if they put it in like a curry, they would be like, okay, this is fine. But I literally like it enough that I could just like bite off the root as a snack. I have done that before.
I'm laughing. I can relate. It's not turmeric for me, but I have a number of things like that that would be very weird to other people. That you're like, oh yeah, this is good to me. It tastes good. Because we detox. You know, people always like to talk detox, detox, detox. Well, one of the biggest things we detox, I believe, is our tongue. Because, I mean, you know, you hear people talk about all the time, oh, you don't use any seasoning in this, or you don't use this, or you use that. And if you look in the average person, I'm pointing at my refrigerator, although it's not in there, like what do most people have in their refrigerators? condiments and things that you cover up on top of this food to basically cover up the flavor to where you're not even tasting any of the food. And that's because our taste buds have become corrupted over a long period of time. You know, the cleaner your taste buds get, new flavors emerge and new things become good to you. So, you know.
Well, think about, like, if you have a bunch of refined sugar. I mean, if you have been eating a lot of fruit and you go have something with a bunch of refined sugar, it can almost taste a little like too sweet at that point.
Yeah.
And then if you're going the other direction, you're like, fruit is so bland. Why? Like, how do I learn to like fruit? Because you're like so used to this very hyper palatable flavor.
You probably noticed this in Costa Rica. It always drove me. I couldn't even imagine this. You'd go get, because they would have fresh fruit where you went and got smoothies, and they would put scoops of sugar in with it. And I would always tell them, hey, no sugar, no azúcar, because I'm like, I couldn't even imagine putting sugar in with the fruit. But for a lot of people, and I had friends that I'd go have a smoothie with, it just wasn't enough for them.
Yeah, which is really sad because fruit's delicious.
Yeah.
But if your taste buds are doing that kind of a thing, I think that it's fair to say that some level of intuitive eating is fine.
Yeah.
Because at that point, your intuition is different than how it was when you were eating a standard American diet.
And that especially pertains to meat. And listen, I'm not some enlightened being that just came down from the heavens. I know more about meat. I know more about meat than 95% of you out there, because I was smoking meat for barbecue a couple of years before I went vegan, and everything was about covering. Like I had rubs, and I had rubs with like 8 or 9 ingredients in there, and you had to rub, and that flavored the meat, and then you had to do this to flavor, and you had to do all these things to different types of food. That I don't have to do that anymore. You know, I eat a food, and I taste a flavor. There's not like, oh yes, I taste a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this in there. So your palate will definitely change, but you've got to kind of give it the chance.
And even in that one food, there's more than one flavor. If you have like a plain food and you've given your taste buds time to adapt, like I was saying this about the papaya last night. If I'm hungry enough, papaya tastes like honey, and it tastes kind of floral, and it's got all of these different like flavors going on to create the one like papaya flavor.
Right.
And for some reason, when I'm like really hungry, all of those little accents come through a lot stronger for me, which I find interesting. It's one of those things where food just tastes better at that point.
My tongue is like a bloodhound's nose is. Like if I'm cutting up multiple mangoes, like if I have a tall faux mangoes and I cut up say 4 or 5 in a bowl for a fruit, I'm literally I taste different. Each bite tastes differently because each bite has a little bit more different sugar in it. Now, before I would have never known that. That's fruit. That's just a bite of fruit. But I can take a bite and I can be like, oh my God, that's one of the best bites I've had. And then I'll take another bite and it's kind of bland. So, you know, you just really get honed in on being able to taste the subtleties of it like that. But, so I'm bringing this back to the intuition part. See, I wouldn't know that, though, if I didn't get through those stages. And, you know, kind of learn these things. And that's, like I say, that's where the knowledge comes in. And that's where not everything will be. There will be some things in the beginning that are intuitive, and there's some things that won't be intuitive.
Yeah, I really resonate with this idea in the beginning of being intuitive about who and what advice, information, knowledge, etc. to take in, to consume. We have to be careful about what we're consuming regardless of whether it's food or information.
Right.
And so using your intuition for that as opposed to for the food itself, I think is really useful in the beginning. And then there's a shift where your intuition serves a place with the food itself. And at that point, I think also you've kind of settled into like, these are the sources that I tend to go check if I feel like I want more information. Honestly, at this point, it's pretty rare that I see nutritional information that is actually new for me. That I'm like, okay, I should go do this with my diet. Like, I've done a lot better with sprouts lately, but that wasn't because of new information. I already knew that I should, that I wanted to be doing those. It was just a matter of the timing being right for when I actually put in the effort to get started doing all of that.
Well, you probably figured out it was so much easier. Like sometimes, you know, you're like, oh, this is probably going to be complicated. And then you're like, oh, this is ridiculous. So
yeah, you build it up in your
right.
head like it's going to be hard, and that first one does feel kind of hard just because it's new. Just like
right.
my first YouTube video felt like so freaking hard because it's just new. And I still record ones that I just like don't even wind up posting because I'm like, this is just not good yet. But
right.
but when it's new, it feels a lot harder. And then once you've done it even just like 3 times, it becomes second nature. So building those kinds of habits that you can rely on and that can be sustainable allow you to be more intuitive when it comes to your actual food and
right.
in the kitchen. So it takes both.
But you've got to get to a certain place too before you actually are and so you're rewarded with the knowledge that your intuition is right, because so many people yo-yo back and forth that they never get a true gauge of like what they're doing.
That's a
so
really
they don't really know. It's like, you know, they're not. In other words, basically, you got to clean out the machine before you can really figure things out. Like I can do more now because I've cleaned out. Like, you know, I eat differently now than I did like my first 2 or 3 years. And I'm totally convinced that was what was necessary then. And it's not like I was eating wrong then and I'm eating right now, but I'm just eating for where my body is now, the experience it has with how it's been eating and so forth.
That's part of the intuitive process, is being open to adjusting and adapting depending on how your situation is changing. That's a really important part of serving yourself well. So without that element of being open to adjusting, because you're getting different feedback from your body in some way.
And always just being open to adapting in general. Too many people, like, this is not something to, like, be stubborn about. I think so many people, you know, they just like, you know, they have their certain person that they follow, or they have their certain information that they take on early, and it's kind of like they're going down with the ship. And that's a lot of these raw vegans that you see disappear. They're stubborn. They want that what they're doing isn't working for them, but they keep going, and they're like gung ho, and they're telling you, nope, I'm not going to change, and then they go away and they're not even vegan or whatever anymore.
No longer vegan.
Keep an open mind. I don't care about nobody doing this diet. I ain't got no gurus. I ain't got no idols. I don't give a shit about anybody. But I respect everybody, and I will take a little something. There's people that maybe I agree with 20% of what they say, but I get something of value out of what they say. So don't totally discount anybody, and don't totally be open and just listen to everything that anybody says. It's always about critical thinking. Anything in life about critical thinking and having an open mind.
Yeah, another thing that I've seen a lot of those people in that kind of category do, who are no longer vegan, or like they've done like the raw vegan thing and they really like got indoctrinated into a certain way of doing it. And maybe that's what they did the longest, but then there at the end you see them frantically trying all of these other different methods. And with those, again, while they're trying it, it's this like total indoctrination thing until they skip to the next method. But what they even do then, that I've seen in a few cases of, is trying these other methods each for just like a month or so. Like, you don't have enough feedback from your body to know what worked and what didn't. Like, you could cherry pick things from the different styles of vegan to build your own style of vegan that works best for you, or your own style of raw that works best for you, and figure that out. So in the process, you've cherry picked all of the things that really worked for you, versus going 100% in all of these different directions and then changing your mind so much that you don't even know which little parts affected you. You can't get any information out of that. And it becomes kind of like yo-yo dieting, even if their weight isn't going up and down, which for some of them is the case and some of them isn't. But and I really empathize with feeling like you need to fix things. But honestly, the other part too is that we're not actually, like, we're not immortal. Like, you're not going to feel like you have the energy of a 5-year-old when you're like 60 years old, and it's, you know, like, that's just not how it works for the rest of your life. You're not going to be this perfect, infallible creature.
Believe me, I'm the perfect age to. I think about that all the time, because I'm kind of one. I'm used to feeling good, and
and you should feel good.
And I'm 56, but at this age, there's going to be aches and pains, and there's going to be things that don't work, and I'm not used to that. I'm not used to having that, but we're all going to have aches and pains, and not everything's going to be perfect, but.
Yeah, the expectation of things like that just literally not being there, and trying all of these different diets or lifestyles so that by the end you're back to eating animal products and doing whatever else. You don't actually feel any better or any different. Like, you still got the same set of problems, and it's kind of just, you know, we're not immortal.
Right.
So
So in the end, it all depends on you. Make good decisions. Be open-minded, but make good decisions.
Use your critical thinking skills.
Yep. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed that one and got some use out of it today. I should mention, Amanda's done more videos since she's been gone, so down in the description below there's a link to her channel. I'm getting the long sleeve shirts, and I'll have more beanies up soon, so there's also a link for the store down below. Go check that out, and we'll see you guys again here real soon. We got a bunch of videos planned, and yeah, so stay tuned. Peace.
Bye.